You're watching TVC Breakfast. We're heading into the papers now to see what the headlines are across Nigeria. And I have with me in the studio Leadership and Communication Strategist, Dr. John. Dr. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank God it's Monday.
Abby, what do we do?
A cautious Monday. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
All right, let's begin with News Direct. News Direct newspapers is where we start from this morning. COVID-19, 50% of global airlines may collapse soon. IATA is saying this. And this is really troubling, I must say. All right, from News Direct, let's go to Daily Times. Daily Times says how Abba Kyari cemented executive legislative bond. That's Lawan is saying, that's the Senate President, says that the late Chief of Staff was never a vicious power monger. Okay, that's Daily Times there. From there, let's go to Daily Trust newspapers. Daily Trust is saying that COVID-19 delays 155,000 court cases in Nigeria and fate of 51,983 awaiting trial inmates hangs. Lockdown hits lawyers. ICT not used in the courts and lawyers want palliatives as well. Okay, these are all riders on the headline there on Daily Trust. From there, let's go to Blueprint newspaper. The Blueprint is on COVID-19, and it says anxiety as community transmission hits FCT, and tension in Borno over retired nurse's death, and we are awaiting NCDC confirmation. State government is saying this, and President Sebas Monguno Shehu reporters at Kyari's burial from the villa. And bandits kill 47 as Masari locks down Katsina. Those are headlines on the Blueprint. Then the last one we're seeing now is Business AM, and it says broken country. COVID-19 shows Nigeria government is distant from citizens. That is the headline you see on Business AM this morning, and certainly that is where I like my guests to talk about broken country. COVID-19 shows Nigerian government distant from citizens. All right, Dr. I know this will interest you because you have, it seems this is like a line you have used so many times when it comes to the disconnect between government and the people. But would you say this is peculiar to Nigeria at this time?
It is not peculiar to Nigeria, but when you take a look at our development level and our dream, when you take a look at our capacity and the ability of the Nigerian people, then you will be concerned. There are other people where government is disconnected from the people, but you can easily just forgive them. Nigeria is perhaps one of the most energetic nations of the world because of the kind of people you find in here. You travel outside of the country, you see the exploits that Nigerians are doing all over the place. So in such a country, you expect that this will translate into good governance. And I tell people that good governance most of the time may not be a product of performance. It can actually be that of perception. So no matter what you're doing, if your citizens think that you're actually distant, then they will, yes, so be it. So it's a major challenge. And I'm going to start with the issue of the palliatives that we saw all over the place. You know, the government over time has hammered on the less privileged, has hammered on this one language.
The poorest of the poor.
The poorest of the poor, the vulnerable. And this is an expression of disconnect from the people. Because,
why is that? Because
majority of those people that are not even disadvantaged at this moment, they need palliative. It's not a product of the poorest of the poor. Look at, if you are self-employed in Nigeria, it doesn't matter what your total take-home was in 2019. At this moment, majority of those people that are self-employed, they need help because we weren't preparing for this peculiar situation.
Because if government can release monies in trillions to assist businesses so that the economy can roll on as the case may be, then everybody needs help one way or the other.
So that's an expression of disconnect because the expression of government is different from the expectation of the people. Okay. The expectation of the people is, oh, we are all vulnerable. We need something at this point in time. But government expression is, no, the poorest of the poor. And they've been over time. And it's also the way you communicate your policies across to people. Most of the time, when you communicate your policies across to the people efficiently, they will be able to support you in time of trouble.
Or even be patient with you if they have to be.
Yes, if they have to be. And that's why communication holds a very strategic place in leadership. You can't lead the people by keeping quiet. You can't lead the people by not selling your idea to the people. When you sell your idea to the people, it is what will give them hope of a better tomorrow. So no matter, I tell people, when you talk about change, change is one of the most difficult things to do because it involves the breaking of chain of habit. In other words, this is the way the people have been doing things over the time. And when you introduce change to them, that means you want to break that chain of habit. And it's always very painful. The only thing that can sustain them during that process is change management. And how do you manage change? By communicating to the people that, oh, this is where we are at this moment, and this is where we are supposed to be. But I'm citing this administration as an example. When it comes to communicating its ideas to the people, I think we have not done well. The World Bank, I think the World Bank also in 2014 says that the best strategy to cure poverty across the world is to allocate more resources to people living in abject poverty. And boom, this government came on board and started transferring conditional cash to the people. That is one of the most wonderful projects that any government can start. But look at how lack of communication, lack of transparency has almost robbed us of this very fine initiative. So the government is not bereft of idea. The government has a lot of idea on its table. But how do you communicate this idea across to the people and you stand transparently to translate this idea to reality? I think communication is missing, and that's why the gap is getting wider by the day.
All right. Now, beyond the issue of the palliatives that you talked about, even before the COVID-19 that has put the whole world where it is right now, a lot of people see themselves as very far away from government, whether it is the federal or the state or even at the local government, because of not having access one way or the other. But when, apart from what programs, reaching to the people and communicating, when it comes to the actual development of the people, creating the infrastructure and all of that, how on track do you think government is in that regard?
You see, it's a two-way thing, and unfortunately, it is connected. If you fail to develop the people, you fail to give them the basic things that they need, at the end of the day, they run back to you as a burden.
Okay.
They're supposed to come back to you as a blessing if you give them everything they want. That's why a House of Reps, I was with my friend who was in the House of Reps, and I saw him doling out money to people, 10,000, 20,000, and it got to my turn. We were to discuss, and he gave me 10,000. Then after the meeting with the people, I went back to him to return the 10,000. Then he was asking me, are you angry? I said, no. I've seen the way you've been giving people money since morning. I don't want to join them. I'm okay at my level. But do you know the meaning of that? The meaning of that is that the people at their own level have not been developed. So they carry their burden on their elected representative. And the burden of the people practically chases the elected representative from his constituency. That, again, creates some kind of disconnect.
And gap.
Between the people and the governed. And that's why an average person, it's this same disconnect issue that is causing problem on the day of election. For example, I go to cast my ballot, and that is the only time I get to see the governor of my state or the House of Reps member. Then I kukuma say, like we usually say, I kukuma collect what belongs to me. And when you collect 5,000, I did an arithmetic of a governor who actually won election with 300,000 votes. And on the day of the election, the government, because he was part of the government at that point, distributed 5,000 to each voter. If you calculate that, it gives you about 1.5 billion naira on one day, the day of election. So this will also, at the later on, hamper the level of development. So we continue to move round circle until we have a disruptive leader who perhaps just comes and says, we need to do things right. So as we speak now, it's a difficult time for us, development-wise.
Basically, Omojua tweeted something recently. It was saying that it is everybody knows the solution to a problem. until it is time to put things into practice. I'm paraphrasing it that way. When it comes to analyzing what the challenges are, everyone seems to know what the issues are, but why is it so difficult, to put these things into motion when the time comes, when people have the opportunity?
We don't have courage, and it takes a lot of courage to actually, for many of us that have been involved in transforming even organizations, you discover that you get to one organization and they tell you, oh no, this is how we have been doing it, this is how we have been doing it, apart from capacity, which we are not lacking in Nigeria. I think we need courage. It takes courage to disrupt an existing system in the process of wanting to build another one. We are people that enjoy life and we want life. And your life is going to be involved. There will be threats here and there. At our little level, you will see the threat you will receive when you want to try and turn around an organization. So it's a product. It's not that, I often say that, like he said, just to buttress that the problem we have in Nigeria is not lack of knowledge. The problem we have is doing what we know. And doing what you know requires a lot of courage. So I think we should hammer on the place of courage in leadership. I was talking about the character of leadership the other time. There's one C at the beginning and there's one C perhaps at the middle. The C at the beginning means care for all. The C at the middle means courage. And without courage, you cannot practice any virtue consistently. So it's not a product of what we do not know, but it takes a lot of courage. And this is where political courage is lacking in Nigeria. If you get to a political position and you want a second term, you're going to lack the courage. Because we have seen, I'm going to cite the case of Edo State, where the former governor actually did a test for teachers. And he discovered that some teachers could not spell, could not spell simple words. And he said, no, we cannot retain this set of people in the civil service. But boom, when the second election came, he said, no, we are not going to do nothing. Because the man was afraid of the next election. In Lagos here, there was a time we banned Okada. Okada was not, they were not moving on the highways. But boom, next election was coming, everybody forgot about that. So until we cure ourselves of the problem of next election, or we cure ourselves of the problem of always wanting your political party to win, that's another thing. Oh, you want to satisfy the people. And the art of leadership is not an art of satisfying everybody. It's art of building a system that will, in turn, satisfy people. And the process of building the system will not be palatable, but you have to be able to communicate that across to the people for them to believe.
All right. So communication is key here. It's also central.
It is.
Dr. John, thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Let's head into the papers now, see what the headlines are. And I have with me in the studio, Leadership and Communication Strategist, Dr. John. Dr. Good morning again.
Good morning, Mike.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Great. All right, now let's start from the News Direct. News Direct newspaper is where we start from this morning. COVID-19 is the emphasis here. 50% of global airlines may collapse soon. IATA is revealing this information. All right, News Direct, that's what News Direct has. Daily Times, how Abba Kyari cemented executive legislative bond. That's Ahmed Lawan, the Senate President, is revealing this and says that the late Chief of Staff was never a vicious power monger. All right. Daily Trust says COVID-19 delays 155,757 court cases in Nigeria. All right. From there, we'll go to Blueprint, and it's talking about COVID-19. Anxiety as community transmission hits the FCT, that's the Federal Capital Territory. Tension in Borno over retired nurse's death, and we're awaiting NCDC confirmation. The state government saying this. And Presidency bars Mongono Shehu reporters at Kyari's burial from the villa. Bandits kill 47 as Masari locks down Katsina. All right, now this will interest my guest to talk about. The issues around community transmission. The numbers are going up. From the Blueprint, let's go to Business AM. Broken country, COVID-19 shows Nigerian government is distant from citizens. That's what Business AM has. Now, Dr., you will be interested in this, the story on the Blueprint, on talking about anxiety as community transmission hits the FCT. Now, the point there is we're seeing the numbers are increasing. In fact, in the last 24 hours, we've seen the highest numbers increasing. That's about over 80 cases so far in 24 hours. This is the highest so far. And we are on lockdown in Lagos, lockdown in Abuja, and then many states are also, having their own lockdown, different kind of lockdowns or curfews and all of that. But we still see the numbers rising. How scary is this to you?
It is extremely scary because if you take Lagos for as a case study this morning, you discover that if Lagos is on lockdown in the last 2 weeks, it's not just a lockdown of yesterday, and we still have that kind of number. It shows that it will have been worse if everybody is going
about their normal
businesses. But again, the future is my concern because we have seen the reality of today. Today, death here and there, and like I often tell people, if we are not careful, this thing has a capacity of clearing out an entire community. So it underscores the need for us to be very careful, to abide by the rule of government and all that. Having said that, I think the government also needs to seize every opportunity it has to communicate what they want the people to do. Over time, I've said it in leadership that it's not just about giving directive. You show direction. When you do things the same way you want people to do it, the message sinks better and quickly. So every opportunity the government also has, they should communicate social distancing. They should communicate the need for us to live an hygienic life.
But these are the stories that are being communicated every day. In fact, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 have been doing their almost daily press briefing, talking to Nigerians. The government of Lagos State is doing the same thing almost on a daily, reaching out to people. Most of the media houses have one information or the other, reaching out, sending out, disseminating information on COVID-19. Social media has been awash with short videos of all kinds, using comedy, using music, using... What more can people do before this information reaches the grassroots, really?
Unfortunately, what you do sinks better than what you say.
Okay.
Yeah, especially when you're leading a people of 200 million, you have the educated, the semi-literate, and the illiterate. So when you have a community like that, I expect that government should concentrate on how they act, especially when it comes to acting where there are cameras, because these things have an opportunity of going to homes. So I saw a funny but very disturbing picture. I don't know how far it is, in one of the East African states where there was a meeting and everybody maintained the normal distance, and they came out to take photographs, and perhaps they've forgotten, they are not used to it, and everybody was. I think that's the one opportunity that we actually missed while the federal government actually buried the former chief of staff to the president, the opportunity to actually communicate to people. It's not necessary. Wishing anybody rest in peace at the graveside will have been so unnecessary, especially if you really miss that person. So it's a peculiar time. So that's why I said that every opportunity we have to act it, we should let the people know that this is exactly what we are communicating across, so that they can believe what we say.
Yeah. Now, beyond that, we still see, if you walk the street, and there are some persons who just still say that there's nothing like COVID-19. That COVID-19 is far, far, far up there, that it is a sickness of people who are rich on one hand. Others say, well, it's just a scam. Some people still call it scam as of today, even when they've heard of the number of people dying every day.
This is the disconnect that we have talked about oftentimes. You see, the way the brain works, I think perhaps we should learn it. The brain has what we call the internally generated data. The internally generated data, when you see things, for example, if you jump from one place to the other and you get hurt, it records in the brain as a negative action. So when you want to jump the next time, what does the brain do? The brain reverts back to the internally generated data and tells you, Mike, the other time that you jumped, this is what happened. So I think we, in one section of our brain as Nigerians, where we receive government information, it always reverts to the negative. Maybe it's a product of the fact that promises have been made over the years that I will do this, I will do this, I will do this, and when government fails to do it, it reverts back to the brain as a negative data. So tomorrow, if government now comes out to say this thing is happening, the first thing is that your brain reminds you that When
So
government said
it's
this
from
yesterday,
government, so
yes,
it's
from government. When they said this thing yesterday, it was actually a lie.
So it's on a default mode.
Yeah, it's on a default
To
mode.
reject.
So, yeah, so we need to continue to fight this. And fighting this thing, I tell you that if government tells a lie today, the effect goes beyond today. And that's the effect we are having now. That's why a lot of people don't want to believe. I was telling a very wonderful story of 1999. I was reading newspaper in 1999, and I saw a government say that Mercedes-Benz may be sold for 50,000. That registered in my brain. I'm telling you from 1999. But in 2003 again, I heard government say that, oh, once we privatize all the government establishment, they will be working 100% efficiently. And it didn't happen. In 2007, I heard again that I'm going to declare emergency in power sector and there will be power. But power went down. So these are some of the things that my own brain has been able to record over the time. I was a young boy at 1999 here, but I could record it. So if care is not taken, if a government is coming out to say another thing, it automatically just reverts back to the information, the data that my brain has already recorded, and I may want to react that same way. So we should not be tired. There are people that the community believe we must continue to engage these people. We shouldn't be tired to communicate to people. As I go to my own community too, I try to reach out to people who believe me. You do the same, then perhaps we will just go past this level.
All right. Now, if you go to every social, any organization right now, let me put it that way, from medical to food to media to whatever as the case may be, you see the caution of, okay, no, stay there, you know. They give you water to wash your hands. There's hand sanitizers and some of these. In fact, there are places where, like even in the organization, if you're coming in, they check your temperature before you come in. Now, these are habits that would have been in place on a normal day. But the point there is, except for times like this, the only time we've had this was at the time of Ebola. So when it comes to having this as a habit, even after COVID-19, what do you think is going to take to have this habit on a daily basis?
You see, for the future, I know that even in the next few months after the crisis we are in, after the pandemic, we will still have been able to maintain that kind of lifestyle. But I never knew that NCDC is such a very important organization until this thing actually happened. So there's the need for us. We shouldn't go on sabbatical. INEC should not go on sabbatical after election. This sensitive and very important organization should find a way of getting across to the people. NCDC should not just say because there's no, I know they've been working on the ground, but this has underscored the need for them to always be out there. Let them communicate even after now, so that we will not be taken by surprise. I pray that we do not have another pandemic soon, but let's begin to communicate this habit to the people, even in times that you need to prepare for war in time of peace. If you see any nation or anybody that is preparing for war in time of war, that nation will be overrun. So there's the need for us to continue this habit, and it comes by reorientation and all that, even from these agencies of government.
All right. Now, another thing I like to ask is the issue of fear and anxiety. Before now, we saw how scared people have been when it comes to talking about COVID-19, and then from the report we got, it is one of the reasons why if anyone has or shows symptoms, they don't want to go out there because of the fear, the scare, and then the eventual stigma if they have it and all of that. Do you think it's still the same?
I think it's still the same, because if not, we'll have had people who will not have the Lagos state government, for example, chasing people all over the place, because they say now that they have to be looking for people and all that. And majority of people even still declared wrong address. And after that, it's not as if after 2 weeks that they've changed their mind that, oh, I was actually the one you're looking for and all that. It shows that the element of fear is still there. And the element of fear there is not just about whether they will die. It's about how, first, the government will treat them. And second, how the society will react to them. So majorly, it's not the fear of whether they are going to die. First, do we have that trust in the government, that the government is working for our best interest? That's the first one. Then secondly, if after I might have overcome the virus, when I go back to my community, do I still get accepted into my community? So these are the major fears, and I think there's the need for us to keep talking about what the government has done so that it will encourage people who may have to come out and say, oh, let's run tests and all that. Then again, apart from that, I think people may not be 100%, they may not have got to a point where they trust the testing. For example, if you test somebody and it runs positive, if you take the person into isolation and you treat the person, before you release the person, you test him twice. And when the person turns negative twice, you release the person. What happens at the point of testing positive if it was a mistake? So these are these are some of the things why, okay, have we trusted our testing process more so that either we like it or not, either the government is saying the truth or not, we are doing that in a haste because we really want to meet a number. It's not as if we have these things all over the community. So what if a mistake happens in the process?
Lagos just opened testing centers in the 20 local government areas of the state. So anywhere you are within the your local government, you can actually, and then some local government, due to the population or the landmass, have numbers of test centers more than, like Alimosho has more than any other local government because of the population, the concentration of people, and all of that.
So I think the government needs to continue to do that, because when you look at what the government is saying, in reality, and the number of tests that we have conducted, you'll be wondering that, okay, if government
we just have hovering around 7,000.
Yeah. So, and government keeps saying, we are increasing, and at the end of the day, when you bring out the total number of people that have been tested, it's still below 10,000. So these are some of the things, I think, more than just coming out to say we are increasing this thing. Let's do it in the real sense of it, so that at least it is scary, Mike. If you look at the number of tests we have done and the reality of the people that have tested positive, it is scary. It is scary, Mike, if you look at the number of people that have tested positive and the number of deaths. You may say it's 21, but when you put it in percentage, you know that we are in serious issue here. So there's the need for us, when we say stay at home, there's the need for us to stay at home, and government should come across as a system that is working for the interests of the people, so that we can clear all this doubt. A number of people, though it's a community of 200 million people, you still expect that there will be always that 10% that will doubt the government. But there's the need for us to work on the 90% that will trust the government, that the government is working for my interest. And it comes by keep talking it and doing it.
Talking and doing. That's one thing. That's one area that a lot of people, a lot of Nigerians are saying that government is talking more and doing less. Now, the issue of palliatives is part. In fact, I was discussing with I had the governor of Plateau State earlier on, and I was asking, how comfortable are you when it comes to the issue of palliatives? Nigerians are complaining that the conditional cash transfers and the distribution of food is not getting to people as it's supposed to be. Now, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs has said that it is people who recharge their cards, recharge their phones with about 100 naira or less than 200 naira that are going to get, they are the ones considered as poor and vulnerable, or people who have less than 5,000 naira in their account. Now, how much of a data is that? I'm being careful with word, but it's actually very annoying when you get to that point, especially when you use the word, when it comes to vulnerability. At this point, I've said it repeatedly, I am also vulnerable. But the level of vulnerability may actually be different, but once you define it as the number of people having less than 5,000 and all that, people whose accounts were running into millions last year cannot feed now. You remember the caliber of people, if they have called you, that have called me seeking for the basic things of life, 1,500 to feed. So when you define vulnerability from that perspective, you are going to have from the 5,000 naira perspective.
It's an issue. Then we should look beyond the data of BVN, like a lot of people have suggested. You see, each state has a register for voters, as registered voters. And the interesting thing about that is that it comes with a phone number. You know that the people in my community are more vulnerable than people perhaps in the capital. You know in Lagos that there are some areas you get to that people are more vulnerable there. you can access it through that register.
Okay.
And let's have a place where we put all this palliative together, so that the state government, the federal government, and every individual will not be given to one person.
Okay.
It's possible that you get your 5,000 naira conditional cash transfer. It's possible that you still get food from the state government and some other people.
And even another church bringing.
Yes, and some other people around you.
All right, so that it spreads around your people. Dr. John, thank you so much for your time
It's a pleasure.
on the program. Thank you.